So it's 8 o'clock and we're all here. And so I'll go ahead and call the September 28th Whatcom PUD meeting to order. And the first item on our agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. And I believe, Mike, you're up for that?
I am. Thank you, Arturo. Will everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Great. So we have the agenda before us. Are there any changes or amendments to the agenda as provided?
I see none.
Okay, well, with that, let's
Commissioner, I just let you know that Bill McDonald is on Zoom and he'll be available to address any questions on the process that you have at this point, but I've been trying to give you the regular updates. I see it, he's first under old business, so I would, for that, I'll suggest you excuse him.
thank you. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second.
And there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And the motion carries. Let's move on to the consent agenda. We have two items under the consent agenda. One is the approval of the meeting minutes to the regular meeting September 14th and the claims for September 28th.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as it reads.
I had just one small change, and I haven't sent these to you, Anne, but just under the RDOF description, it says public providers can't serve in these zones. And I thought it more accurate description is that the bidders in the RDOF auctions must be designated as eligible telecommunications carriers. I don't know if they could be public, most of them are private, but I just thought that that would be a more accurate description. So if you all are okay with that, I was just going to send Anne the revised description of who can participate in those RDOF auctions.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, I'll send that to you after the meeting, Anne.
I'll make the motion to add those changes.
Is there a
And
second?
I'll second.
I'll second it. Yeah, oh, so sure. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda with the one change by Commissioner Grant as identified, please signify by saying aye.
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 And the motion carries. So let's move on to our public comment period. Ann, could you facilitate and see if there's any public comment?
No hands raised at this time.
Okay, we'll close the first public comment period. Let's move on to old business. The first item under old business is the general manager appointment process update. John, would you like to lead that? You're on mute.
Certainly. Thank you. We've been receiving the list of candidates from Prothman and Bill McDonald, very responsive, and every Sunday night, I think I get an email with a list of the status of the candidates that have submitted and received last Sunday night, and then an update last minute as well yesterday. We've sent that out. You have received that summary and who they intend to proceed with the first round of screening interviews, semi-finalists, if you will, and a link to as well to a lot of their bios that came out yesterday. I don't expect, neither does Bill, expected you reviewed all that information since yesterday. You're getting it pretty much as is able to be put together and compiled. So it's real time in a sense. But I want to let you know it's there. And if you have any particular questions at this point, by late emails this morning, Bill responded to be here today, and or I should say early emails this morning. Bill responded to be here today and answer any questions you might have at this point in the process and discuss next steps. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, John. Say good morning, Bill.
Good morning.
I got the list that John sent, and it says here you're going to interview 10, I believe it says.
Yes, right now. And in my memo, I said, if there's anyone you want to add, let me know. But I've identified 10 that I think are the top candidates. And I should just say, obviously, we're not in executive session, so we won't mention names.
Correct.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention names either. I know, Christine, you do not feel well, so I don't want to impose on you, O'Toole. Did we ever come up with guidelines for Bill and what we are looking for? Because I did read what was sent to me, and not totally against the 10 people being interviewed, but Bill, I'm not really sure what motivated you to pick these 10 out of the list of people. What did you notice that maybe I didn't notice?
Have you had an opportunity to go through it? Have you looked at their material?
I only have a very short statement. I don't know how much information you have over what we have, so it doesn't really tell very much about them.
Oh.
So Mike, I just say in my late email yesterday, I forwarded you to an email that had a title update and hyperlink, and one of the attachments, you open it up, it has a link to the Prothman site that has a view. You can view all the application materials, and that's why I said it came out late yesterday afternoon. Bill's been working to compile this. He's been very timely on this, and it's just real-time work. So I don't expect anybody's had a chance to get through all those. Any of the three of you have had a chance to get through those applications since 4 o'clock yesterday. But a lot of their application materials are there and available for you to look at.
So to give you a more direct response, I do look at the strengths that you're looking for, and I look at their career, their experience, and based on that, and I do have the profile that you put together and your strategy 21 document. And when I do interviews, I'm gonna build it around looking, identifying how well they fit to what you're looking for. But that's how I got to the 10.
Okay. I appreciate that, so thank you. Yeah, it's a starting place because longevity means a lot to me. As someone who sticks with a current employer, those who move around every couple of years are ones I tend to question. Why are they moving around so much?
Yeah.
And their leadership is extremely important to me, because leadership is a person who can work with everyone that they're around. And and we've been very fortunate to have that right now, that I would consider us like a family here, if I can say that. I feel that way. I don't know if the others, staff and everyone feel that way, but I feel very close to everybody here. And I hope that continues on, that we work together. So filling that position with that type of person is important to me.
Absolutely. So many that hops would be an issue. I would want to know why that was happening. Get an explanation for that, and you definitely don't want to be going through this process again in a couple of years. You want somebody who will stay around. Absolutely. You invest a lot in it. And I, if you look, when you look at the application materials, you get a sense of who's really serious and who's just applying for a job that really looks cool, and there's a difference. So all of that stuff, you as part of the screening. And, but I think the 10 identified were interesting to me. Some of those will fall away. They're not all going to be the ones that I would recommend to you after I've had a chance to interview them as potential finalists.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes.
And
I'm fin-
and if you go on to that Prothman link that was attached, it's a nice setup. They have a link with all the candidates there that you can, when you click on a candidate, it opens up and it gives you they've loaded a system that gives you all their personal profile, their educational history, work history, all the rest is there in the web page. And that web page also has links to the resume, cover letter, and supplemental information that was provided. So it's categorized by candidate for you to go through and review.
I will be updating that link because it doesn't automatically update. So we have at least one additional applicant, which I identified on the 10 I'm interviewing, but he's not in the link that you have. So you'll get an updated link.
Commissioner Grant?
I was happy with, I think that the 10 that you identified, made sense. I appreciated those summaries and the link to go in and look at some of the full application materials is really helpful. So I think my only question is just with the initial screening interview, we asked the same questions of everyone, right? So it's real apples to apples with the screening that you do, Bill. Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. And then reference checks come further down the line if once we get to a pool of finalists, right?
Right, and we'll in the executive session, we will talk in depth about the final process.
Okay.
And I think, that's when we'll have that discussion, but yes.
Okay. Well, overall, I'm feeling good about the process. I'm glad that we got as many high caliber applicants as we did. I think my only final question is just, are we going to leave it open now, or are we cutting the application off for sure?
It's open until filled.
Open until filled. Okay.
So if we get a red hot applicant, I'll be adding somebody who I interview.
Okay, great.
Yep.
I don't have any other, I'm sure I will have more questions as we go forward, but right now, I feel good about it and look forward to hearing about the results of the initial screening.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I just want to clarify that we are going to address some of the confidential aspects relating to the candidates in executive session today. Is that correct, John?
That'll be available if you want. I wasn't asking Bill to stay, but we could ask him to come back and I can send you the link and a text, Bill, when we go back into executive session. So if that's okay.
My complication is I have a dental appointment coming up here. And it's
well, then you and I can meet with the commission and I can convey any questions.
Okay. It's an implant and I've been waiting 5 months.
While we have you then, Bill, could you talk a little bit about your note-taking process when you're doing the interviews?
Yes. I actually, try to put together I'll paraphrase what they have to say, but I developed questions that are a little bit like the scorecard that you in the book that you recommended, Commissioner Grant. And I'll ask them the questions and I'll paraphrase that. So you'll have the question and then you'll have the answer. And then I'll have a summary at the end of my impressions of the candidate based on the interview. So you'll get that hard copy kind of summary of my interview.
From your perspective, Bill, does it make sense to ask the candidates at this stage all the same questions, or does it make sense at this stage now to tune the questions to their particular backgrounds?
My focus is going to be basically the strengths you're asking for and some of the what I call the priorities that you're focused on. That's what I will be screening. What my semifinal interview will focus on. We've got to talk about how we're going to handle the final interview and you know what types of questions and what kind of format we'll have for that. But that's my focus is going to be on their skill set and what you're looking for in terms of the things you want to accomplish.
So where I'm going at with then is to ask if commissioners, it's a question to the commissioners, not to you, Bill. If the commissioners would think it'd be something that would be helpful for us to be when we review the latest emails from John to identify specific items that would apply to all the candidates, or maybe also the possibility of asking specific questions to specific candidates. Because I'll just talk about a little bit of my experience is that it's obviously we're looking for a pattern that we're trying to fill at the PUD. But the way to figure out whether someone matches, the way to probe that may be different based on the background of the different candidate. For example, it's unlikely that we're going to find a candidate with all the strengths that we're looking for. We're asking for a lot of strengths. And because of that, there may be one candidate is particularly strong in one area or particularly strong in another area. And we may want to either probe deeper into that or in a different area. So I'm just bringing up the idea for the commission, for my colleagues to consider. And that is that should we ask additional, should we offer additional questions for Bill to consider addressing? Mike, Christine?
Altul, giving an opportunity for everybody to answer the same question to me is important, and I think that's kind of the standard platform. But at the end, I don't know what Bill does. Maybe Bill gives them an opportunity to share anything extra that was asked. That maybe that's their opportunity to shine, to be able to say something that maybe, I don't know if it'd be very fair to ask the one question to one and not give the other opportunity. I would, so I don't know, that's how I feel, but.
If
Bill,
I might-
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm sorry. So I'll just anecdote, give you an example. You know, if I ask the question, you've looked at the profile and it has a lot of what you want in there and skill set and the whole nine yards. I asked the candidate, tell me what you looked at the profile. Tell me what are your strengths. I'm not going to get the same answer from every candidate, but that if they're candid with me, and then I can ask the follow-up question is, where do you need help, or where would you need support? And that's a very typical question to ask, and they'll get a different answer from each of the candidates. But if they've done their homework, they've poured over that profile. They've looked at your initiative 21. They've looked at the profile you have for the candidate that you developed. That's all good material. I've gone through this process as a candidate for years, and if you're doing your due diligence, you're going to want to know that you're a good match for one thing, but you'll have answers. You'll have answers to that question.
In response to what you were saying, Atul, I think, John, if you want to if you wouldn't mind forwarding the screenshot of those interview questions that I sent to you and Bill, or I can take another screenshot and share them again. But I think that what I saw, and it sounds like Bill, your questions are fairly similar, but for when we're interviewing, you know, when the commission is interviewing, I think there's kind of like 5 questions that I saw that kind of guide the discussion. And then within those, there's a tremendous opportunity to explore things like and a lot of it focuses on what they accomplished in their past roles. And that's where you can, you know, laugh and talk, you know, you just have a general framework, but you can ask follow-up questions within there. So we don't need to be robots, but I do think having a general framework is good so that we're consistent and making sure we're not letting things slip through the crack, and also holding applicants accountable to say, well, if you're great at X, show us why you were great at X in your last position. John,
I've sent that forward already. Okay. I just sent that to the commissioners. And then, that was from a book I think you had identified. And yeah, we had shared that with Bill a few weeks ago. And I think Bill said that these are similar questions are within his framework. I just, so you know, commissioners, knowing you may not have time to pull that up, it's the screening interview guide, or what are your career goals? What are you really good at professionally? What are you not good at or not interested in doing professionally? Right. Who were your last 5 bosses and how will you rate them? What were you hired to do? What accomplishments are you proud of? What are some low points? Who are the people you worked with? Your boss's name? What was it like working with that person? What were their strengths and areas and weakness?
Yeah, that I read the book, by the way, and the top down grading, those kind of questions, so you know, when we talk about final process, we can talk about how we can tease that kind of stuff. But you understand, my semifinal interview is a screening interview, so I'm going to try to get a feel for what they are and what they can do, and so that I can bring to you what I think are your candidates that fit the best for you. Okay.
Right, and thanks for that contribution, Christine. That's an important contribution that the whole team has recognized. And the way that I'm seeing it is that as we go down this process, the degree of to which the questions are open and where the discussion becomes more free form will increase. Initially, we want to be in the screening phase, we want to be very objective, but ultimately we want to see, as Commissioner Murphy is suggesting, that they fit. And that has so many attributes to it that it can't all be objectified.
And they need an opportunity to get to know us too, like you said, because it's about fit. So we also need to be prepared to answer their questions and sell them on the opportunity for why they should come here. So it's a two-way street.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right.
We need to be on our best behavior.
Well, sounds like we have a great dialogue going on here, and I appreciate all the work and from everyone. And I have no further questions or suggestions or ideas. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. If there's anything out of executive session that's critical for you, I'll let you know.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. See you, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
So there's no action on this item. It's just an update. So let's move on to 5B, broadband program update.
Christine, I don't know if you had anything. Otherwise, if you do, that's now's the time to have for you to chat about that. But we also have the item under 6C, which is the curb grant. So
I don't have that much to add at this point. I mean, given that we're talking about curb later in the agenda, which I'm guessing you will be leading, Steve. I think, you know, we continue to have our steering committee meetings every 2 weeks. And there is Executive Sidhu is wanting to meet with the steering committee to talk about our progress, essentially. And I think that meeting might be this week, but I haven't gotten a final confirmation. Have you, Steve?
No, I have
No.
not. I have not.
But the executive's office is tracking the broadband progress closely, and I would say wanting to explore all options related to improving broadband infrastructure as quickly as possible. So the speed with which we can deploy infrastructure seems to be a top priority. So more on that once we have the meeting, and we'll talk more about curb later in the agenda.
So what has crystallized so far out of the steering team in terms of action? And I guess what will happen in the steering team comes up with the actual, will it prepare a proposal and then it'll go to the PUD and the court for approval? Is that what way this steering team works? How does it work?
Well, I mean, at this point, the most concrete action was what I described at our last commission meeting related to the project out at Mosquito Lake Road, using the $2 million in curb funding that the port already had, and then the $2 million roughly in EDI funding. So that's a project that they are it's the port's project. It's not our project. But they got the most recent update last week was that Gina Stark updated curb on this project, and they were really happy with it and liked it a lot for a number of reasons, because it included a public-private partnership with Pogo Zone and serving underserved area like the Mosquito Lake Road area. So I guess the most tangible outcome is that the port is going to be moving forward with that IRU, the irrevocable right to use contract with Pogo Zone, and then hopefully moving forward with construction as soon as possible. But that's not a port, that's not a PUD project, it's a port project. So I'd say right now the role of the PUD is just to kind of ask questions, because it's not our money and it's not our project. So which relates to then curb, which is, our opportunity to kind of actually dip our toes into this work more.
Would the port benefit from an opportunity from the PUD to quote unquote officially endorse the project or in some other way express support for the project, or is the port just essentially delegated the how to expand infrastructure to staff, and the steering committee is essentially just providing input to staff? Is that how you see it at present?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few different, as you know, there's been a just tremendous amount of pivoting that has had to happen because curb has changed their priorities. The Whatcom County Council has had a lot of feedback on how the EDI money is used and last mile connections. And so I think that the goal of the steering committee has been to ask questions about how we're using the funding. Bless you. And
Wait a minute, you can't catch this through a Zoom call.
I know. Oh no, Zoom contagion. So yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that I have tried to convey in the steering committee meeting is that solving broadband challenges in our county should not be the port's responsibility. It shouldn't be the PUDs. It shouldn't be the county. It's something that we all need to work on. And so I think that this steering committee is kind of like the beginning of that process. And that's why having Debbie All from the Mount Baker Foundation, I think adds some benefits too, because we're all bringing sort of diverse perspectives in terms of our questions. And I think that's kind of helped us, you know, this is our first small project that we've identified. And I think it's an opportunity to learn a lot and then keep moving forward. So
and I thank you. So the steering committee is like an advisory committee to the board, but it could be an advisory committee that would provide advice to other entities too. For example, for sure the PUD, but also maybe the county and perhaps the city.
Yeah. I mean, and I know, you know, at one point I had said that I felt like maybe we should form a broadband office and have, you know, that was back when we were trying to hire an FTE for broadband and how, but I know that some people feel like, oh, well, that's just more bureaucracy forming an office. But I do think there's so many different players involved and it's an issue that so many people care about that it shouldn't all just be with, you know, one organization. We all need to have a role in how we're forming solutions to broadband. So, and that's why I think I look forward to the discussion with the county executive. I think it's still, this process is still evolving for how we work together. And I believe that with, you know, that collaboration between different organizations will produce a better result. I don't know how the two of you feel, but.
So yeah, I mean, that's what this agenda item is for on the agenda. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, Mike.
Right.
We're using the word curb a lot, and I thought maybe a lot of people might not know that curb
Yeah.
stands for Community Economic Revisitation Board. Other words, CERB, we're calling it curb. Is that correct?
Community Economic Revitalization Board.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure for a minute on that myself.
So so what the one thing I want to start off in my feedback to the steering committee is firstly, I think it's wonderful that there's a plan to actually get end user service. It's a comment that's come back from various parts of our community. You know, just doing backbone alone is doesn't necessarily guarantee end users get service.
Right.
We've heard feedback at high levels. We've heard from PUD also, for example, where they've said George Kahn, whose judgment I trust on this subject, says the best things communities can do is deliver results for end users. That's very much the kind of off the record guidance I've gotten from other commissioners at other PUDs, is that once you start getting the community pregnant with public service, more and more people want to get pregnant. And so it's a so pardon the comparison. The point is that once people get this service, other people say, well, my neighbors got this from the public agency, you know, with the public agency's involvement, then I want it too. So it'll help in that way. And it's what many people have suggested as the way to bootstrap this process. So in that sense, there's a lot to this approach that makes sense. But I also, and this is a but, I usually am careful when using but I also believed in the original vision that the port laid for, which was backbone. Now, the original vision begged the question how that somehow or another retail is going to happen. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm curious about in this project, how will it augment the backbone? So I'm not in any way opposed to the project. I'm just curious about how will the project as currently envisioned augment our, open access, oh, is it open access or will be closed access backbone?
It will be open access. Well, the project, the Mosquito Lake Road project will be open access.
Okay, how will that augment the backbone?
Well, Steve, can you just make sure that I'm getting this right here? Those other phases of work are, I mean, they're not off the table. They just needed to pick a starting place to begin work. So, I mean, Gina has done a lot of analysis around the backbone work, and it's not like those projects have been thrown out the window. The problem is that we just don't have unlimited funding. And so we had this pot of curb funding that I don't know when the port got it, but it's been sort of available for a little while and it needed to be used. And then there was the EDI funding. Then there was a strong push from both curb and the county council to have those last mile connections. So, I mean, I would say that my understanding is that if we had, you know, a magic wand that would create a whole bunch of funding that we could use right now, we would be building those. You know, I think the port would want to build the backbone segments, but it's about getting the funding to do it. And you know, and so I know that Gina is working really hard to track all the different funding opportunities that are available. But you know, we don't have enough money right now to do those projects right away. But I mean, Steve, I know you check in with Gina more than I do.
Well, I think the Mosquito Lake Road, and then the other one is I think they're referring to it as a Nooksack Valley project, which is the area north and east and a little bit, just a little bit south of the city of Nooksack, originating, I think, just east of the Nooksack Valley Middle School there in Nooksack. And I think that those two will be open access through an agreement with Pogo Zone, and where Pogo Zone will build and operate and maintain the system, but provide a number of fibers available to the port. And that will create an open access opportunity there. So.
So does the project as currently envisioned include the construction of any new in-ground or above-ground fiber lines from Deming to, for example, Glacier, as was like the last iteration of the revised port plan?
My understanding is that at this time that the section from Deming up to Glacier is now being left up to Zipley, and that the port is concentrating on these two other areas.
Okay.
Well,
That's
and
the question I was asking.
Zipley did ask the port for fund, you know, they wanted to partner with the port and get, you know, up to $2 million, or maybe they wanted either some of the curb funding or the EDI funding, and gave the port a proposal. But it doesn't, you know, I think that one of the big challenges with all of this is, you know, how do the public sector and the private sector work together in a way that makes the most sense and provides the most public good? And so we don't want to give, you know, private telecoms funding for projects that they would have already done, you know? And that's why ultimately picking this area that was more economically distressed, that we knew would probably be very unlikely to have a private ISP build to, was the best use of funds. Getting fiber to some of those kind of ski condo areas in Glacier, which was the plan that Zipley wanted, didn't sit right with the steering committee. So it's, you know, I think one thing that all of us feel frustration about everyone that's involved, I think even Gina would agree with this, is just that I think all of us would like a master plan for exactly what's going to happen over the next year, 2 years, 5 years. And it's just hard because it's really dynamic right now. Things are changing quickly. You know, ISPs are coming and, presenting proposals and grant funds, and the state broadband office executive director just changed. You know, there's constant change that we're having to adapt to. So I would love to see a more concrete plan, but we also have to stay adaptive. So it's like it's kind of this tension, and I'm hoping that Chris Walker from NOAANet can help us with some of the kind of analysis that we might need, and to help us take a little bit more of a data-driven approach to what a long-term strategy could look like in terms of what the PUD's role might be.
I think you just covered item 6C.
Well, great.
Or at least a prelude to.
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard. It feels like a 10,000 piece puzzle, you know. It's not. I think if the answer were simple, we would have been implementing it already, you know. But I think it's a complicated problem to solve, as you know, Commissioner Deshmani. You know, it's. But if I would love to, we will pass on your backbone comments, and I mean, I think
No,
that
I was just, it's a curiosity, you know.
yeah,
the port,
no, I agree.
I think obviously the port, I know that the port supports the backbone.
Yeah.
Because that's what they originally proposed. The question
Yeah.
is that devil's in the details.
And I think that what we really need to do some analysis on too is different financing options available to us
Okay.
to make this happen.
I have no further questions, and I'm not proposing any particular action or inaction. The steering team has participated in a process with the port to help guide the port's already committed funding to serve the community. And I think it's very important that there be results for the community as soon as possible. And so I think that I'm glad to see that that's moving forward towards results. So.
Yeah. And as far as your comment about the PUD endorsing the project, I think there will come a time when that might be useful, but it's probably going to be a little bit further down the line when there's more of a public announcement about what's happening or closer to construction with the Mosquito Lake Road Nooksack project.
There's no idea yet on timing of that project, is there?
Steve, do you?
No, I don't. I'm not aware of any, although that the funds through the curb, the $2 million plus that Commissioner Grant referred to, I believe they have to have that spent by the approximately 2 years from now. And so that's the only timeline that I'm aware of.
Okay. Great. Is there any more discussion on this agenda item 5B broadband program update? Commissioner Murphy.
Yeah, thank you to both the commissioners and Steve for all you're doing in the broadband. I appreciate what's being said and what the port is doing. I call it a big leap to go all the way out to Mosquito Lake Road and Glacier. However, is there anything that we can do together, but maybe take a little lead on ourselves? If we could just move every half mile, or whatever out of Ferndale North, I think we would benefit a lot of people, because there was big requests between us and Blaine and maybe even over to Sumas. If we could just not sit still and wait, if we could start taking some action now with the port, with NOAANet, but maybe we take the lead on that part. I'm not asking to move in big leaps as Mosquito Lake Road is from Bellingham, but just, you know, a couple miles.
The Commissioner Murphy, I think that Commissioner Grant at the last steering committee meeting, there was discussion by Gina Stark at the port about doing just that piece, moving from the Mosquito Lake Road and then going north to above the city of Linden and heading west to Ferndale and Blaine as one of the next steps. But that doesn't give the PUD an opportunity to take any one of those areas, and if you would really kick it off and get into any of the detail in terms of design and construction. So
I think that we should defer to Chris Walker and wait for, he will be, and we can talk about this more under the agenda item where we talk about curb, but I think that that's where having his expertise guide us is going to be really helpful, because none of us have worked in broadband the way that he has, and so he's the expert, and I would like to hear what his recommendations are to the commission.
You mean like Chris, of course not Chris Walker himself, the work he's planning to do work that will elucidate the questions that Commissioner Murphy's asking.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think just very quickly that I think part of the challenge, and I think Commissioner Grant has brought this up and more than once, and that is that there is a significant rush right now to take advantage of federal and state funding for broadband and lane hanging fiber and even wireless connection. And so I think we're all trying to catch up, if you would, and open up our hands to accept those dollars and do something meaningful with them. But at the same time, we have to understand that what we really need is to have projects that are ready to go. And so in order to do that, we need to take another look at the entire county and say, what is the best approach in utilization of those dollars? We can't simply say, okay, let's do the next step. So I think that's really part of the challenge right now. So when we get into the 6C today and talk about it a little bit, it's like, okay, where do we go? What's the next step? How do we get ready? But at the same time, we need to have that plan that we can build off of.
And we also need to make sure that we're complementing the work of the port and not getting in their way or stepping on their toes.
Right.
And I agree, Steve, but don't we have fiber already ran out to the Cherry Point area?
We have fiber that goes out to parts of Cherry Point. Yes. Yeah.
Is that possible that we can tap into that and start expanding north?
It's possible, but we didn't lay that fiber with the expectation that that would be, one section of the broadband network, if you would. So we really need to look at the entire county. The port did this, 2.5 years ago. And so, they did some of the core work, but we need to step up and take that work that they did and embellish on it, and then really take a look at different options in terms of developing our own ISP, in terms of maintenance and operation, all those kind of things. So.
Thank you.
Thanks all for the discussion. Can we move on to item 5C?
Commissioner, I'll pick this up quickly. This was asking you to consider adopting Resolution 796, which was declaring special market conditions for the purchase of used materials, equipment, or supplies. And I believe that at the last meeting, There was concerns about the dollar figure. I think there was concerns about the process. And so the decision was to table this until commissioners had an opportunity to contact myself or John to ask any question.
So I think under this topic, there was also some changes made to minor changes made to the resolution, right? That we're adopting the 5796, or is it the identical resolution? Commissioner Murphy.
Yeah, thank you, O'Toole. Yeah, Steve, John, thank you for the changes made. Appreciate it. Steve, can you clarify more about what is 1C and 1D? They both sound like they're the same, but at the same time, it sounds like C is asking for permission and the other one is D is telling to inform the board of what staff has already done. Is that true?
Commissioner, if you look at item C, I think the big difference is the commission may, but is not required to object to the plan and purchase or impose parameters for the purchase, including but limited to budgetary, age, condition, or other relevant. So that's really the difference. And I don't know.
C is what the general manager of the district is seeking to purchase, or what the planning is to purchase if that opportunity comes up. D is a report of what has been purchased.
Right, that's kind of how I read it. In fact, it says that the commissioners may object to the planned purchase, where D says that the purchase has already been made and is just updating the commissioners of what was purchased. So I guess we can be approached two ways, either asked or told. Is that what it's really reading?
Well, let's look at the timeline here. I think if I can jump in, and maybe Steve, unless you want to take this, Steve, but the timeline is, it says quarterly report about what is maybe planned to purchase. And this is a specialty condition. It's a market. You're delegating the authority to the general manager to make these purchases. Circumstances may arise where something is to be bought that you don't wait the full quarter to say, hey, here, I'm planning on buying something. You may have a matter of weeks and you've already delegated that authority to the general manager to make that purchase. And on a quarterly basis, he'll report on those purchases made. If there's a longer, we're planning on buying a truck, we're looking at a secondary market. If we see something, we're going to get this. You've already approved it in the budget, and here's the estimated cost of this that we're guessing. At that time, there's enough lead time that the commission might say, we disagree with that. We're going to, even though we delegated the authority, we're going to tell you we're urging you not to purchase this without amending the authority that we delegated, but you can do what you wish, general manager. But we express our objections, or you can formally say, no, we're going to deny you the authority to make that purchase because we strongly object so much that we're not going to allow you to exercise that authority. So there'd be a variety of tools you could do if you had concerns under C. D, again, is that short time lead that you've already purchased. You couldn't wait to review it with the commission on the quarterly updates, and the general manager has made the purchase because the bucket truck was needed.
Okay, well, I thank you for the way it's been rewritten. I appreciate the patience that the board has had with me. My concern was us. $200,000 is a lot of money. I'd like to see the commissioners involved, but I'm also okay with the way it reads. And if the other commissioners are okay with it, I'm good with it. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm good with it. I just want to speak in response to your question, Commissioner Murphy. I'm good with it. I'm glad you raised the concern. I think we have is a better resolution as a result of it. So thanks for raising the concern. And this is something that it's a new thing. So we'll get some experience over the next year and how this provision is utilized. And of course, Steve isn't the rabble rouser, so he'll helpfully establish a good precedent for the commission in how this used equipment is communicated and purchased, and I think we'll hopefully over the next 6 months we'll discover problems or we'll establish patterns.
Commissioner
So
Grant,
no
I can-
argument.
I can
No
make a
argument.
resolution if we're ready to. Yeah, thanks Commissioner Murphy for asking those questions. And I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 796.
I'll second it.
Great, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
No.
All right, then, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. The motion carries.
thank you.
And thank you for your patience with this process, everyone, and I'm glad we got this adopted. I guess I would like to ask, is there a first target for this new capability that you're seeking, piece of equipment?
The bucket truck is probably the first item that we're thinking about. We've had it in the budget for some time, and so we think this is an opportunity. We became aware of several bucket trucks that are now available, literally sitting on some lots around
The one
area.
by my house?
Yeah. So
I've got
that,
my colleagues, I live on Laurel Road, and at Laurel and Meridian is the Meridian equipment auction. So I see the bucket trucks every day on my various commutes, so.
yeah. So that's the first one. And we have not picked out anything, but we see them coming up, and we've had it in our budget for some time, so.
Great, thank you. So moving on to new business. First item is 6A, which is the approval of Washington Department of Health grant.
Commissioners, I'll take this, I'll start this out, and then Dave Olson is going to join us. And Dave has just, I think, about 3 slides maybe that he's going to go over with us and talk about the grant. This is a $40,000 grant coming from the State Department of Health, and it's an opportunity to utilize Dave's services again. And it's essentially the installation, choosing several wells and then installing a monitor on those wells. State Department of Health has indicated they have an interest in using Whatcom County as one, I think, of only 2 possibly test sites. Oh, we're the only one. I thought there was one other one. And as a test site to look at groundwater wells and determine whether or not we are seeing any significant changes in the level of water supply in those wells. The idea is to look at potable wells, drinking water wells. This is why it's coming from the State Department of Health and not say the Department of Ecology specifically. And Dave will be conducting all the work and working with the local agent that has developed the well monitor. So Dave, if you want to take it.
Sure. Thank you, commissioners. This is getting to be a regular habit about every other meeting to chat with you all. So I think this is a real testament to the effort that the PUD has made in the local community for one of your initiatives, working with water associations, but really it's water systems that are not cities is what you're doing. And in particular, this is Group A systems. When you talk about the Department of Health, as a reminder, the Office of Drinking Water, their jurisdiction is Group A systems, not Group B. So it doesn't mean we're not still meeting with them, but this is just an example where at the high level, Cheryl Howe. You'll hear that name because she'll be a part of one of your meetings in the future when this develops. She's the Washington State Office of Drinking Water for the Washington Department of Health hydrologist. And she serves all different kinds of roles in that position. And one of them is she is on the governor's drought advisory board or committee. Don't quote me on that. And so what happens is at that level, you have direct connections for things that are going on where they make decisions and funding. But because of the history of the PUD in Whatcom County, working on broad issues and then applying them to the local community, the PUD's name comes up in those environments where they come up with an idea and they say, let's reach out to Whatcom County PUD and their team and see what they think about X or Y. So this is an example where Cheryl, being at that level, working with state representatives and state officials, where she expressed a concern for water systems that don't have the resources, where they might have shallow wells, there might be a water supply concern, and was wondering if there was any resources available to help with it, not really knowing what that means. And so she basically reached out to us at the PUD and says, I've got this vision. Can we help these water systems that have shallow wells that might be at risk during a drought, trend things that are going on and maybe get some advanced warning? And so I just have to take the opportunity to thank the PUD for allowing me to be a part of the part that's in my wheelhouse and yet a part of your initiatives. So they reached out and they said, what do you know? Here's our vision. We have no idea what to do, where to go, what it's going to be involved. And the initial thing was we'd kind of like to do this somewhere in the Northwest, not necessarily Whatcom County, but they originally, in their lack of understanding, they thought they would put a few wells somewhere between Seattle North and get an idea to help people with shallow wells in the event of a drought. And so after several discussions, we were able to convince them that not only was the technology and the professional technical expertise here in Whatcom County, that in order to develop a pilot program that they could use other places, they really need to focus on developing that. And through all those discussions, we ended up where we are today, where they said, great, we have no idea, what can you help us with? And so we are able to show them, and I'm going to share my screen real quick on something that Steve and I had talked about, and we did let's see if I can find my screen here so I can share that. That's with a PowerPoint. And this is just an example screen is all we're going to have here. So you get the idea. I bet you're not seeing that yet.
No.
It's coming.
Oh, Dave, I can share my screen too.
Yeah, why don't you do that, Annette? If you could share that PowerPoint picture, that would probably be quicker, so I don't get lost in the process this morning. Super, thank you. So it's just really 2 slides that we have for you. And so Steve and I had been brainstorming, and of course in my field working with water systems all over Whatcom County, we actually had installed before the Department of Health and Cheryl called us what we call the mushroom. And so this is a 6-inch well casing to give you a perspective on size out at a rural water system. And that little mushroom at the top basically uses the cell phone network. And the little device on the right-hand side is what we call a it's a transducer. It simply measures pressure, and you can convert pressure into water level. And so that little mushroom there collected to the cell phone network on the top of the well is reading the level of the well and the temperature of the water in the well. And it also reads the temperature of the air above ground. And so we already had one of these where we were tinkering with, in cooperation with a local technical group in Linden, actually, that works all over the country, but they're here based in Linden. And so if you switch to the next slide for me, please, Anna. So what you need to focus here is only on the trend. I'll tell you what you're looking at, but just the trend is the concept. If you look at the yellow line, that is the temperature of the water in the well. And if you look on the far right-hand side, let me get my, make sure I can see it here. On the far right-hand side, you can see it's very granular. I mean, you're only changing from 49.4 to 49.5 degrees, but the key is you can see a trend. And so over the summer, over the years, you can see year over year layering of temperature, which is really important to hydrogeologists. And if you were to think even bigger in all the things you talk about water in Whatcom County, imagine that you had that temperature information for environmental management and the impacts of water and fish. As you just really expand about this information, it just fits into the big picture of water supply that you're working on as a PUD. And then the orange line, think trend again, and don't try to analyze it too close, but what you have is the well that we're monitoring is in a well field where there's two other wells. And so what you really see there is when you see an aggressive dip and back up, that's one well that pumps fairly heavily, but for short periods of time. And the shallower dip that lasts longer is simply a well that pumps less, but for a longer period of time. The key here is this orange is the level of water in the monitoring well. And you can see that as the summer goes on, the temperature is climbing and the water level is dropping. And again, if you look at the left-hand side, you can see it's pretty granular. You can see the water level dropped over roughly a month's time from 37.4 feet to say 37.9 feet. So what is that? 0.5 feet, half a foot, 6 inches. And over a month, that's not surprising. But if you were to lay this year over year as you collect the data, you get big picture. And certainly for wells that are shallow in aquifers that are rain contingent, could be impacted by drought, depending on their relevance and how close they might be to surface water. It's just a lot of very valuable information. And if you, as you step back in the picture, you've heard about groundwater modeling in Whatcom County and all of those things that are related to water supply management. This is just one of the tools that can be used at all different levels, individual water systems, as well as fitting into the big picture. And so we shared this with Whatcom County. Chris, who is, let's go one more slide and then we can get off the slides and I can wrap up here. This is just a more detailed version. You can zoom in and out. And this was just a more condensed time frame from the 27th through the 3rd of September this year. So thanks, Ann. So really what we're talking about here is a great pilot program. And the goal would be to, with the $40,000, we're doing 3 key things. One is we're using local expertise for the benefit of water systems that don't have the technical or financial resources to do something like this. And we're going to implement as many of these as we can with specific targeted locations, high-risk locations, but it's not necessarily to deploy a large quantity of these. The goal here is with the pilot program is they want to develop what's the best system? How can we gather the information? How can it be made publicly available? How can it possibly fit into local network of information? And so some of the people at the county who are working on a data management system for this type of stuff, at the end of the pilot, we'll have not only data that's important for individual systems, we will also have data that can feed into the big picture of water supply management and be available to the county. And it also would be a public resource is the goal. So we would work through all of those behind the scene logistics, not only technical, but fitting in the big picture. And Department of Health's goal is to be able to have something that they can kind of package up as a book that they can say, hey, look where we can do other places in the state, but we get to pioneer it. So it's just really a cool project that we get to do. And I'm excited that the PUD is willing to facilitate this. So I hope that covered it all, Steve.
Thank you, Dave. And I see commissioners may have some questions. I'd just like to say thank Dave and working with the Department of Health. I think this is another great opportunity. I think that Dave's comments about how this can be integrated into all the other work that's going on is, I think that we can't say enough about that. We are developing and have developed a groundwater well monitoring system. And I know that Chris at the county has been starting to work on the data management piece. And if you recall, that was one of the items that was in our 2021 strategic plan, that we would be working with other stakeholders in the county on data management and data collection. And yes, this is not going to be something that's going to, it's going to be completed in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But I think it's another opportunity to use state funding to highlight the work that we're doing here. So I appreciate it very much.
I didn't have any questions. I just wanted to say thanks to Dave and others because it sounds like a really great project and a really important part of helping the community have better information. And, I think really this all relates to how we adapt to climate change and become more resilient as a community. And so looking forward to hearing more about it. And I just wanted to say thank you. It seems like a really exciting project.
It really is. And I would just highlight that this is the way I understand it from them, depending on how we do here. This is the beginning of resources that Department of Health might be willing to do on this, although we get to template it. My impression was that our success here would provide more resources locally to do more of these. So we're excited about it.
So Commissioner Murphy, do you have any questions?
Yes, both. I see that smile, Dave. You knew it was coming, didn't you? Both to you and Steve. I support this because I see the information, especially when we deal with issues of climate change and drought issues in Whatcom County. But you said you're going to try to get as many Group A systems as you can. How many is that are you planning, and who are you planning to impact? And do these Group A's get to pick if they want to participate in this?
So let me clarify if I misstated. Because the Department of Health, Cheryl she kind of had this vision where they were $500 a piece and you could put in large quantities of these in a pilot. These are not cheap. There's many thousands of dollars by the time I'll just throw out a number. Let's say by the time you install each one, vet the location, get permission from the utility, get their cooperation, buy the device, install the device, pay for a year's worth of monitoring or 2 years. You're talking thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands, but thousands of dollars per location, plus all the pilot effort and the data management effort to create the template so that you get your bang for your buck as you go down the road. So my vision is we might have 5 of these with data and the program all put together out of this. And so we're not talking about very many systems. The idea ideally would be to have 1 in each of 5 basins, not knowing exactly the number, maybe it's 10, I don't know, but we would pick key basins to work in. So there's not just 5 in one community, so that we get it's best for our county, and we have total decision over that. It has to be Group A systems because that's the funding source. Yes, it's entirely up to them. Nice thing is that working with on a regular basis 70 of the 100 systems in Whatcom County, we have good relationships with them already, and so it won't be an intrusive thing, but it's ultimately their choice. And vetting each of the locations is fairly technical. They have to have a well that's usable. We have to have well logs for the well. They have to have be registered with various entities, and these are the conditions that the Department of Health has set. So I'm guessing, out of the 100 Group A systems that would fit the bill, we shouldn't have trouble coming up with 5 to begin with. But I would say that it's very entirely up to them. We're just have good relationships with so many. I don't anticipate that'll be an issue. So imagine that you have 5 agreed upon key locations with these installed so that we have the initial network for the pilot test.
Thank you, because even though Group A is a group of people coming of different numbers, size, I still look at them as private. Otherwise, it's individuals, a community coming together, a neighborhood saying we have one system. So I hope we respect their privacy, because this information now will go public, and I'm not sure of the outcome of it. Where would that Group A be penalized during certain times of the year, saying you can't draw water, you can't use it? I'm seeing that around Whatcom County already, where you're seeing more and more signs put up that you can only water on certain days, or you can't do this, you can't do that. And but if they have the choice and if they can sign off on it, then I guess that means they're approving it. So.
And I can tell you that was some of the concerns that were brought up early on. And so when we talked about publicly available information, Department of Health, aside from you being a public entity, and I realize everything is available through public disclosure, certainly we recognize all that. But from a pilot project being a template, the intent is to template all of this and not simply publish it for public use. So this is a pilot project. I recognize it could be available, but let's say we get to the end of the project, we get a great template, we get great information, we know what we would like to have. But before we get to that next step where, hey, we have 27 locations that are by some number, site 1, site 2, the general public wouldn't generally know where that is, and yet it has to be location based. And so the intent is, just like you might have a list of past due customers, you wouldn't have their name or any details about them, but there might be a number. And so it's to keep it as benign as possible and still have good data in the system, such as your modeling and things like that as a location. But ultimately, when we get to the end of the pilot, anybody that volunteers to participate, our expectation is they would have always have the option to stop. This is not a lifetime commitment. And so and I can wear that hat really strongly. And if they're willing to participate and benefit from it, great. If they feel uncomfortable, then they either don't have to participate or they could change their position later. So I think that we're all very sensitive to that, in my opinion.
It does bring one other thing too, as a well starts to drop, if there's any chemicals or anything in the water, I believe they concentrates as the water drops. Are you going to be able to monitor the water too, of the quality of water?
That's not part of this pilot.
Okay, thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
So some of the issues around this obviously do relate to what Commissioner Murphy addressed, which is about the public's, particularly the rural public's relationship with data. And some things about this kind of method of measurement is it's a pressure transducer is not an accepted method of gauging actual consumption or flow.
Agreed.
It has to do with the physics of it. It may never be an accepted way of because I worked on that a little bit, how pressure for fuel measurement, and I used in my prior work experience pressure transducers for getting a general tank level kind of reading, and it was very helpful information to be able to have real-time understanding of where your supply is. And if we present this solution as a way to empower the rural water user, it might go over well. And so the choices we make about communication about this technology and its application early could make a big difference in how widely it's adopted. And one of the choices we could make and ask the Department of Health to support us in is really making this a tool that makes the day-to-day life of the users of this water better as a result of knowing this information. And I don't even know the specifics of what that means, but I'm guessing that hopefully it's something for you to keep in mind. Frankly, it occurs to me that an app that particularly an ag water user would be able to have to tell that him or her or them what their water availability is, would be something that would be really empowering, particularly like this, what happened this summer. So not as a way to imagine adverse effects, but as a way to manage their. So I think the thing that many people repeatedly say is that we all really want to, respect the natural resources, but also our business objectives too. And the more information a rural user has, the more effectively they can make their various timing, planting, watering, harvesting, all of those decisions that they have to make, the more rich their data set is. And actually, I see the weakness that I described earlier as actually an asset of this technology, because it's not a way of actually accurately measuring consumption. And it is an accurate way it can be an accurate way of telling directional trends of supply. This could be a potential breakthrough in the community in terms of how we communicate about water in the ag sector. And so obviously echoing the kudos to our team, Steve, Dave, for identifying this, pursuing this. And my fingers are crossed that this will be received in the way it's intended, which is really to be something that helps our community.
Well, let me encourage you that if we were doing a more formal presentation, I could actually hold up my phone and show you that the app already exists and it has alarms for levels, for well levels, not flow, but for well levels. You could get indicators of levels of concern, knowing a well depth and how much you have to draw on that particular well, not flow related. So that already exists in various forms, which is what we show the Department of Health that we've been tinkering with. And so whether it's individuals or collectively in a basin, imagine a network of these, there's so much of that advanced information, either day-to-day management or overall management, which is great about technology. There's so much we don't even realize it's available. And then the other comment that I had was, I'm not, one of the most common things you'll hear on the street, and I know Atul, you've expressed it, I know Mike, you've expressed it personally, is, do I have to go out and measure my well every day? When do I need to be concerned? Is my well dropping? Is it a day, a week, a month problem? All of those types of things. And unless you do it manually, how else would you do it? So if you take a collective community where those people are concerned, but they really don't understand how to keep track of something like this, or do I need to be looking at a neighbor to connect water to, or am I going to have to truck water in? That level of operational management, it's such a great tool that it isn't a very big leap for them to understand how beneficial, not the flow side, but the well level side, the source side. How much do I have available, and do I need to start conserving water or slow down my pumping so that I can make my water table last longer? Those are the most common summer questions we get, and you hear about people calling and saying, my well ran dry. this is a proactive approach to that. So it really has great values right along the lines that you're thinking of, not only as individual systems, but for the community as a whole by basin. And so that's all those things that you described are actually going on behind the scenes, and it's the pilot brings those pieces together for, you know, the PUD to help grasp the bigger picture in your broad county role. So everything you described is really exciting, and I think you're right on track.
And I'm assuming, Dave, that the vendors of well gear and well equipment are totally on top of this already and are already selling and installing this equipment for end users, because end users, they're probably, you know, that's what vendors do. They're on top of it, right? Is that fair to say? Are all the vendors in the county
No.
that deliver pump and well services, particularly to you know, the bigger scale agricultural users, already on this?
I would say that they have the pieces, but they don't have any clue what the puzzle looks like. They don't have the framework of the puzzle that's being put together. So we have local vendors, the mushroom. We had a local vendor and say, hey, we have this cool mushroom as one of our resources, and we're just trying to figure out how to deploy it. And I says, oh, wow, let me have one of those. You know, and then we have a local well driller who understands the concept, but it's so out of their wheelhouse to be messing with, they don't need the data.
Or well house, sorry.
Yeah, right. So it's the puzzle pieces, and Steve and I, this is what we love our breakfast, well, in the old days, our breakfast conversations, we see all the moving pieces and we get to create a framework and put the puzzle pieces together. So that's what this is. It's water systems recognizing, man, we're really scared. Department of Health saying, we're concerned for water systems. And then the local community says, how can we bring the pieces together to come up with something that really fits the bill? And so the local vendors have the pieces, but they would never know how to deploy them. I shouldn't say never, but they don't understand how to deploy them for our benefit. And that's what's so neat about this pilot. And what's so great about the PUD and its willingness to, as Mike would say, let's get out and get something done in the community. It's putting those pieces together and strategically making a difference. So I would say that nobody's really thinking about how to put those pieces together. That's what's so cool about the PUD's view, strategic view of things.
Right, and then hopefully getting other people to think it's a good idea too, and think they invented it. That's the way we want this to go.
You got it.
We want a big water well pump services company, or perhaps more than one, say, hey, we've got this great new gadget for you guys to install on your systems. And ideally, there's the equivalent piece of hardware that works in a tributary.
Correct.
Yeah, I think this is the key in terms of the bigger picture, is that, and I think Dave mentioned on a couple of different occasions today, but if we look at drought monitoring and drought resiliency, and we look at stream flow, we look at stream augmentation from wells, stream back to wells, and we look at a data management piece across the entire basin west of the mountains, eventually these are the kind of opportunities to use something like this to be part of, not the answer, but a part of what kind of information should we be trying to gather, what kind of data, and then how will we use it. I think this is just the first step in several different opportunities. So.
Well, sorry for the diversion, colleagues. You can tell I'm passionate about this subject. So, but thanks for the work we're doing here. I don't have anything further.
I'll make a motion to approve the Washington State Department of Health grant, and it says GBS 26362-0, authorizing general manager to sign.
And I will second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
The only thing I would add is I want to thank Dave. I want to thank the Department of Health. Is it Cheryl, I think? And please pass that on. And Steve, I think this is great. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, hey, real quick, is there any potential of putting something about this on the exhibit at the fair?
We can sure take a look at it.
I mean, it's a little techie.
Yeah,
but
yeah. We'll follow up on it.
yeah, I mean, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Just a thought. So that
Do we still need to say aye?
We need to
Sorry.
have a vote on
Sorry.
this.
I got so carried away. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, Dave.
Okay, let's move on to item 6D. A change order for Patelco Inc., the Ferndale Pump Substation Project.
Commissioners, we're still at 6B. They approve the
How did
deposit.
I guess I skipped the grant. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're on to 6B, the deposit payment to the Bonneville Power Administration.
And I'll take that one, commissioners.
Thank you, Steve.
Over the last few years, as you're aware, Steve and I have received a number of inquiries about connecting to our system in the area of Cherry Point. And these requests came in from potentially large load customers, everything from data, basically server farms to cryptocurrency miners. And then more recently, a number of large industrial concerns have talked to us about obtaining power in the Cherry Point area. Back when Phillips 66 had their proposed renewable diesel project, we had our first experience with going through an interconnection request process with the Bonneville Power Administration, because whether or not you need to actually physically connect to Bonneville, if you're already physically connected, but if you have a large load, you need to inform Bonneville and have them do a study process of that. More recently, because of the number of requests we receive from entities that were looking at sites around Intalco or north, and given the fact that we have no existing electrical facilities in that area, the only way that we could serve those entities, if they were indeed the site, would be to connect to Bonneville facilities. And there is a multi-step process you have to go through when you make an interconnection request to Bonneville, as well as other utilities in the region. There's a prescribed process you go through that's identified in their transmission tariffs. So we thought it would be prudent, because of the number of requests in that northern portion of Cherry Point, to inform us what needed to be done, that we'd submit a formal request for interconnection to the Bonneville system. And as it turned out, we were talking about an interconnection at the Intalco substation that would get us onto the Bonneville network. We started that process last July. And as a result, the first step in that process with Bonneville did an initial study, very high level study that looked at what facilities they may have to place to accommodate the amount of load that we're looking at bringing on the system. And then also take a look at, well, given the size of the load, do we have transmission capacity on the network to accommodate it? Or do we need to make upstream changes to our system as well? So it's a lengthy process. And it points to a problem that's going on right now. And Bonneville seems to be impacted the most, but we submitted that request July 2020. Bonneville completed the initial study, came back to us and said, given the size of the load, we're going to have to make substantial upgrades to our facilities in the Cherry Point area and back to their Custer substation as well. In addition, we're going to have to do a study of available transmission capacity. because of the size of the load. To give you an indication of how busy Bonneville is right now with interconnection requests, since we submitted in July of last year, Bonneville has gotten 65 additional requests for interconnection from utilities that either have large industrial customers that want to come on the system or large generators. So Bonneville has bogged down completely trying to handle all these interconnection requests. And so what they've had to do, just giving you some background here, but to supplement Bonneville staffing, they've actually hired several electrical engineering firms to actually process these requests on their behalf. So jumping back, we've gone through the initial study, which didn't cost us anything. Now we're faced with going to the next step, which is for Bonneville to do a detailed engineering study of the facilities that are required to interconnect us at Intelco, and to provide a fairly detailed cost estimate of what it would, basically the cost of doing the actual facilities construction and interconnection. This step does require us to deposit funds with Bonneville before they'll proceed. So it's kind of it's a yes, no process. Yes, we want to proceed, or no, we don't. And this is the dilemma. The Bonneville process, because they are now so bogged down, if we were to get an actual customer wanting to site, it would be probably 3 to 5 years before we get through the process and actually physically connect to Bonneville. So it's prudent to jump in. You're expending funds up front for a study, not yet having a customer under contract. But to wait means that you lose your place in the queue. Bonneville time stamps these interconnection requests. If we say no at this stage, we'll fall out of the queue. If we get a real customer, then we're going to have to climb back into the queue and start the process all over again. So that is what this action item is a request to go to the next step, deposit $50,000 with Bonneville to proceed. The other kicker on this one is Bonneville then puts us in the group of customers that want to go to that next step for their projects. They give that bundle of projects to their third-party contracted electrical engineering firm. That firm looks at the scope of the project and will then come back to Bonneville and say, to do that study, to give you the detailed cost estimate and a preliminary design for the facilities, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. We don't know how many dollars that's going to be up front. So if we proceed, deposit the 50,000, then they come back and say, okay, the engineering firm says it's going to cost $200,000 to do the study. Then we're going to be coming back to the commission and saying, do you want to proceed further? If yes, the answer is yes, then the money that we've given Bonneville up front is then applied to complete the study. If we got to the facilities construction point, which we also have to fund, the study cost would be rolled into the project costs, and we can recoup that. If we went out to a bond financing, whatever, to finance that project, those costs could be covered in that financing. So I would say at this point, for the commission's benefit, that the initial $50,000 deposit is potentially sunk costs that we might not recover if we don't go to the step after that. It's a very unique time. A number of utilities are faced with the same dilemma. I think you may have seen in the news that Ponderay County PUD has a large load request for a crypto mining operation and a restart of a paper mill. they're confronting the same thing right now. It's a lengthy process, and you have to deposit money up front to play in the game. So I think with that, I'll stop there and answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Brock-
from the
Oh, Christine?
commission?
Well, I mean, overall, I feel like I'm supportive of this. To me, it's just an investment in economic development for the region so that we can be prepared to welcome new industries and, especially as we think about the future of Cherry Point, having access to BPA electricity is really important. I think in general, and I mean, we don't need to get into this now, Brian, but I'm interested in all the challenges related to interconnection and transmission. Just caught a little bit from Water Week about the Skagit County micro hydro project, and interconnection costs were a big part of their calculus for what project to do. And I know that you've talked about that also, and it just feels like there's so much interest in renewable energy projects, and some of these small scale ones in particular don't work with the interconnection costs. And I guess I'm just wondering if there's kind of any discussion regionally about streamlining the process, or how can we, just these multi-year waits are not conducive to people making these investments in renewable energy. So, I mean, is there any discussion about making changes to how these interconnection requests work? And are most of the costs just from the actual engineering, the construction that needs to happen to the grid, or is it engineering, or what are the big costs associated with the interconnections?
Well, just in general, it's all the things you just mentioned. I mean, it's the cost of engineering, but particularly the case if you're trying to interconnect to Bonneville, you're connecting to high voltage facilities. So
Right.
the cost of the facilities required, in this case, you'd be interconnecting at 230 kilovolts. So it's a lot more expensive than you're connecting to lower voltage facilities. And the other issue is just, just a few years ago, Bonneville would just get a handful of requests for interconnection,
Okay.
sometimes 3 a year.
Wow.
And now with all the legislation passed on the West Coast, moving everybody towards renewables and non-emitting resources, everybody is trying to get their requests in ahead, because they anticipate they're going to have either a large load or a generator wanting to connect to their system. And it's just caused, I'll say it, it's a little bit chaotic right now. There is a number of discussions going on how to streamline the process. Bonneville's been very open. One of the steps they've taken is the one I just described. They're hiring third-party firms to supplement their own staff to try to process and do the studies quicker. The other thing that I hadn't mentioned is that, this is just a facilities study that we're asking for approval on now.
Yeah.
We also have jumped in and are participating in what's called a cluster study to identify whether or not there's available transmission capacity, if in this case we were going to add up to 300 megawatts of load.
Right.
What Bonneville's doing, because there's a number of requests in from various utilities, I mean, Snohomish, PSC, I'm sure is in there, particularly utilities that are on the west side of the mountains, that they have clustered this all together, taken the load requests each of us has, bundled them, and they'll do a study that will all pay a percentage share of.
Okay.
To determine whether or not they have available capacity, or if not, what they need to do. And so it's to the benefit of all of us. They're doing, several requests all at once, and we're all paying just a percentage share of the overall cost. So that's another step they're taking. A third one, and they did this a few years ago, they were looking at transmission system reinforcement down in the Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, Washington area. And got into a process where they looked at alternatives, and it turned out demand side management could take care of the problem and avoid the actual construction of new transmission facilities. So they're looking at that as well to see what can they do that's non-facilities related to address these large power flows they're anticipating to see on their system. But the existing processes are totally out of sync with the rapid changes in the industry and the requests from load customers that don't understand. I read an article on the Ponderay situation. This entity is ready to go. They're signing contracts with Ponderay. And I said, well, it's sort of the feeling all you have to do is flip the switch and you're on. And then they find out it's potentially a multi-year process to actually get power delivered. And they're going, whoa, what's wrong here? So.
And then with the renewable, because I saw in the memo you were saying too that the interconnection requests are also coming from the renewable energy developers. So kind of the old model was maybe build a big natural gas power plant and you deal with your interconnection for that. And but now we have maybe more developers, smaller renewable energy projects, but they're all needing to go through the interconnection process. Is that part of what's going on too?
Yeah, most of the utilities, in fact, it's prescribed by FERC that they require, but you have interconnection request procedures for large loads, typically over 5 megawatts, and then separate interconnection process for smaller loads, smaller generators under 5 megawatts. And sometimes the local utility, if it's under 5 megawatts, they can absorb that generation without doing much study or adding facilities. They can just absorb it into their system. But with these large generators, whether it's a gas-fired plant or a large renewables project,
yeah,
it's a much more lengthy process to get connected. We're with that Tucci solar project, although the output isn't that high, it's the installed megawatts forces them into the large generator process.
Yeah.
And they've just started out. They don't even know yet what the costs are going to be to connect to Bonneville. So that project is slowed down because of that as well.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions. Thanks for explaining some of that.
Commissioner,
Hey, Brian, this facility district load study, will it look at alternatives besides just, like you're talking about alternative energy, but I mean, I'm thinking like, would they be looking at such things as solar or wind or even nuclear for Cherry Point? Because with the mini out there, nuclear, I mean, we could see a small system being put out there to handle actually all of Cherry Point and get off the transmission line, or is any of that going to be done?
Well, you could place generators depending on the size of the generator. If you have generators in Cherry Point that I'll call behind the meter for those industrial projects out there, it's a much simpler process. It just looks, if you've got a generator behind the meter, it looks like that entity has reduced their load. So it's much easier to deal with than a generator that has to connect, a bigger one that has to connect to the grid. So if you had for example, a large scale solar project at Cherry Point, unless they connected behind the meter, let's say at BP as an example, they're going to have to connect to the grid, and they'll go through this process regardless. If they connect behind the meter, then they can work with that local industrial facility, and it will change their load profile. It won't change generation flow on the system, if that makes sense.
It does, and actually, I want to thank you and staff for all your work in this and seeing so far ahead. As you said last year, I think you said you signed up for this and now there's a big list. So I want to thank you for doing that. And I don't think that this will be a loss of 50,000. I do believe that we will move forward in the future in developing Cherry Point. We will need this information. So thank you.
You're welcome, Commissioner. It's going to be an interesting process. If I could throw out it's like all the stuff that used to happen behind the scenes with electric utilities, it was all kind of invisible. But now with the strong push to address climate change and bringing renewables on the system, we're starting the sausage making, if you will, is being brought to the surface, and the public's going to be educated or has to be educated, and all this has to take place to make this work. And it'll be interesting to see what the response is.
Well, their education might be from their pocketbook too, I think. So we're going to see a big difference in the future.
Yes.
Yeah,
I have-
I mean, for me, what I'm seeing is a congestion in the to prevent congestion, the actual transmission, congestion in planning activity on the grid, to prevent obviously reliability problems on the grid.
Right.
And this is a long time coming, meaning, and it's going to be present for us a long time going into the future. And it's something the whole public power community is going to be dealing with for some significant time. And the advantages the public power community has over the private sector in this regard is that we have a little bit of an easier time collaborating with other public entities to do it as like what you're doing, Brian, which is doing joint requests, having a little bit better planning horizon and ability with planning horizon. And it's occurring to me that perhaps another asset that we have is that we can help the private sector when there's renewable projects in a particular PUD to get the project done because of this ability to plan on a bigger horizon. And then specifically, as there's been proposals for supply projects in our region and Cherry Point and others, and they would face significant delays with this interconnection issue. And perhaps one of the ways we can recognize that this is an area that we haven't proposed it yet, but that where we could propose to support future efforts at in renewable supply by doing the studies to support bringing that supply online, because that was something that will have to be done.
And Steve and I have talked about this type of thing several times in the past, but you're in a situation now where you really have to invest in facilities and planning studies well in advance of need. You can't wait in response after the fact, or you're going to fail. It's just not going to work. And the other thing is transmission with all these large scale renewable projects is the key, and the ability to site new transmission is extremely difficult.
Well, I can make a motion if we're ready for that. So I'll make a motion to approve the district's deposit of $50,000 to BPA to initiate a BPA engineering study and preliminary design of BPA facility upgrades required to facilitate district load request.
I'll second that.
There's a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify.
Aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Thank
So
you, Commissioner.
item, thank you, Brian. Let's move on to item 6D, Resolution 802, requesting funding from the Community Economic Revitalization.
Commissioners, I had, years ago when I worked for a smaller city back in Minnesota, I had a finance director that just hated making presentations to the city council. And so every year we'd have him do an update on our budget, and he'd come to the city council and he'd say, any questions? I won't leave it at that, but this is an opportunity to apply to the CURB, Community Economic Revitalization Board, for $50,000 to hire our contractor, Chris Walker at NOAANET, to do a number of different portions of a larger study on basically laying out, quote, the plan for Whatcom County in terms of fiber optics and other types of connections, communication connection. And I think you've all gotten this, but you know, I'll just read the description from the application. So this project aims to bring Whatcom County Public Utility District to an understanding of what barriers exist to broadband access and utilization in Whatcom County. Data collected will include infrastructure presence and the cost of services and the availability of connected devices. Once this data is gathered, the study will evaluate potential roles and actions to overcome the found barriers to broadband access and utilization in Whatcom County. The application was due actually yesterday afternoon at 3 o'clock. We chose to submit this application in this round to try to get ahead of what we expect will be many of these coming to the CURB board, and the next opportunity would be November, and which would mean that the CURB board would not have an opportunity to approve it or disapprove it until January of 2022. This opportunity gives us a chance to get into consideration for approval on November 18th. And if you consider approving the application, we would then submit orally our arguments and support for the project on November 18th in Olympia, because the CURB board is now meeting in person and action on all their actions. So I think with that, commissioners, I will open it up for discussion and any questions that you have, and I'd be glad to take them. We did receive 3 letters of support, one from the Port of Bellingham, one from the Whatcom County executives, and one from the Mount Baker Foundation in support of the application. So.
I have no questions.
I have no further questions. We did discuss this on the broadband update. Background.
Commissioner Grant?
I mean, Steve, you and I have communicated pretty extensively about this, so I don't have any more than, you know, the things we've already talked about.
So. And I know that Commissioner Grant has brought up and raised several questions, as she indicated in my discussion with Chris Walker over the weekend. Suggests that between now and November 18th, we can modify anything specifically in that. So.
Well, and it's a planning grant, right? So the whole idea is that we get funding to come up with a plan, not have the full plan when we apply for it. And so I would say the one thing that I think the 3 commissioners should all be aware of is just that I think we need to continue to work on our partnership with the port and with other entities. And so this is not about redoing work that they've already done. It's about contributing to the effort and really figuring out what we can bring to the partnership.
Yes.
And that this is not an issue that is the port's responsibility to solve solely. And I think, the other thing is just we and the PUD community worked really hard to get the Public Broadband Act passed. And I think that there's really growing interest in our community related to public broadband. So internet as a public utility. And so I really am excited that the work is also going to be looking at that question of what it would take to establish the public ISP, because I think that the community deserves answers on what that would take, what it would cost, what the business plan would look like, so that we're working with taking a data-driven approach to making a decision about that. So again, just really happy that we've got Chris helping us with this so that we can do the rigorous analysis that we need to do to make good policy choices on this. And
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, because you've done so much work on this, do you want to make the motion? Or do you want me to make the motion?
It doesn't matter to me.
Go ahead, Kurt. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'll read it. I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 802.
And I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And the motion carries. Let's move
Thank you.
on to, thank you, Steve. Let's move on to item 6B, the change order number 3 for Ferndale Pump Substation Project.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll be taking this one. It's never good to have change orders. Unfortunately, we have one in this case. And the result of the need for this change order was had to do with the timing of the city releasing our land disturbance permit. Typically, we try to get all of our permits prior to going out to bid. The city's process required us to have a contractor. We all, going out to bid, we knew that the area we were working in required wetland mitigation. And unfortunately, we didn't have the full detail that the city required until we got that land disturbance permit. So it's an unfortunate timing issue. The good thing around this is that we're going to leave our site better than when we were beginning. This was a weed infested soccer field, and it's going to be a very highly biodiverse bunch of shrubs to enhance the wetland that exists next to our property. So although it is an extra cost, the site will be in a much better place when it's finished. So we're asking for the approval of the additional cost for all of the plants required for this wetland mitigation.
I actually have one question. I was looking at the change order information, and I saw that part of the work includes applications of herbicide. And I just know that, we do so much work and talk about, water quality and improving habitat. And I just was curious what kind of herbicide it is so that, we're not contributing to the problems that we're also trying to solve.
Sure. The herbicide application is that's an alternate to actual physical removal of volumes of dirt. The herbicide would be something like a Roundup that would be applied. I think Windwood is the contractor they're gonna apply it per manufacturer's recommendation in the dry. So it's, yeah, it's herbicide. It isn't friendly to plants, but it's what we're going to do is basically eliminate dandelions, buttercup, these kinds of weeds, and replace with native species.
Okay,
So herbicide is a less impactful approach than removing thousands of square or cubic yards of dirt and then importing more cubic yards of dirt. Does
Okay.
that make sense? I mean,
yeah, no, it does. I mean, I think that whenever I hear that we're gonna be applying Roundup to, you know, wetlands, critical areas, it makes me concerned about
Yeah.
water quality. So, you know, if there are ways that we could, you know, minimize the use of that herbicide, I would, that would be my preference. So, I mean, that was the only concern that I had about this. And I don't have a solution. I just wanted to express my concern.
Regarding that question from Commissioner Grant, I share that concern, but I'm wondering, is this the city of Ferndale who's asking us to essentially apply, but indirectly asking us to apply herbicide?
no, the approach is recommended because it's less impactful to the buffer of the wetland than going in with excavators, shoveling dirt out, hauling it off with trucks, depositing it somewhere else, importing new dirt, and then planting. If we just eliminate, they just eliminate the unwanted plants with appropriate use of herbicide, it's less impactful than moving truckloads of dirt. It would take, it's 33,000 square feet of land that needs.
So, but what I just want, I'm trying to understand is the city of Ferndale asking that we change the vegetative cover? Is that what the city of Ferndale is asking? Who's asking that we change the
So
vegetative cover?
whenever you do work in wetlands, it's actually the state of Washington requires you mitigate efforts. And we're doing work in the wetland buffer. And the city of Ferndale is the jurisdiction in the control of this area. So the city requires the project to be permitted. And the wetland mitigation is part of the city's land disturbance permit process. So yes, the city is requiring us to install plants, but it's on a stormwater level it's governed on a higher level than the city. The city is just enforcing what's required by the state.
Are there any other herbicides we could use that come from kind of natural sources rather than synthetic chemicals?
Sure there are. But the question is also like, I want, Commissioner Grant, I'm thinking about the maybe hundreds of projects around the state, which,
Right.
which the state's requirements are encouraging this kind of practice as a way to protect the ecosystem.
Right.
I think
It does. It seems like a contradiction.
I live in rural Whatcom County. I've raised sheep at my place. I've got 2 big organic gardens at my home. I've got lots of buttercup. I've got lots of dandelions. All my neighbors have lots of, like you've got buttercup and dandelions, I assume, nearby you too. Out in the county. My point is, it's interesting to me, and a commissioner's job is not to micromanage. And so forgive me, Alex, for this. I not trying to micromanage, but I'm certainly learning a lot might be an unintended consequence of regulatory requirements intended to protect the ecosystem. So I'm wondering if $64,000 could be spent in a different way to protect the ecosystem that might be more beneficial to the ecosystem than the application of Roundup and trying to displace buttercup and dandelion, which I think there's a lot of those.
If I could chime in here, kind of try to respond to the larger question, and Commissioner, I think you're asking, a good broad question. That is this a firm? But is the question here is to do work within the wetland buffer. The critical areas ordinance that the city adopted based upon best available science that's required to be consistent with the State Growth Management Act requires that you mitigate impact to the buffer in the wetland. And the schedule parameters are set forth in some best available science guidance from the state. The city makes some value decisions when they adopt their ordinance. How you go about meeting that buffer mitigation requirement, the applicant here at PUD has some minor flexibility within that by developing a proposal with its consultant. So to your kind of larger philosophical question of, do we want a different approach than using herbicides in removing non-native invasive species in a buffer, that when we're trying to replace that with native vegetation or other appropriate buffer mitigation plantings? If that is a policy, the commission could say, yes, when we do projects, we don't want to be applying herbicides. There may be a cost to that and the project cost to have an alternative measure. And that's a business decision you could make, and you would go revise the proposed mitigation plan potentially, or still, the city probably has not said use this type of herbicide. It has said replace it on a 2-to-1 or 4-to-1 schedule of this type of plantings. How you go about doing it is your proposal. If you wanted to replace herbicide use with the physical removal, we may have to go revisit the mitigation plan because there could be more effect. The interesting question there is, would the city approve that? Because there would be a greater impact to the buffer, is what Alec was saying before, than applying herbicides. That's something our consultants would have to opine on, and then we go talk to the city critical area specialist to determine if that, if we need more mitigation to address the tracks of equipment going through to put loads of dirt in and remove loads of dirt. So there's kind of a philosophical approach of, are you willing to bear the potential higher cost associated with a mitigation program to avoid the use of herbicides? In the intellectual question that I'm not the scientist on is that a better environmental trade-off?
So yeah, I can say that on that issue, one of the things that a commission has some limits on what it can do. And we're not all part of the design team at the PUD. And I am restraining myself in this regard. Something I'm very passionate about is permaculture. And the principles of permaculture is to create ecological pressure for the desirable outcome and reduce ecological pressure for the undesirable outcome. So there are many invasives all over the county. You can try to murder them all and dig them all up and take the soil God knows where, or you can recognize that there's a way to migrate the ecological system in the direction you want it to. So placing competitive species in the wetland buffer can have a much longer lasting effect with almost no adverse effects. Almost no, because there's always adverse effects no matter what action you take. But I'm not part of the wetland design team for the PUD, and nor am I exactly volunteering for that. But having said that, it would be worth asking the vendor
if there is a way to not use herbicides and also not have to excavate the area.
I am also not trying to micromanage. I just could not help but feel like there was, a bit of it was a red flag for me that we're trying to do this, wetlands mitigation, and it will involve applying herbicide. So
let me defend both the commissioners for a moment and say, there is a perception that you might be micromanaging because this comes up in a particular change order request. But I tried to phrase this as there is a larger philosophical approach to how you do projects that the commission could give some broad direction to staff on, is that when you do bids, when you get these wetland projects, buffer mitigation projects, look for alternatives and give us a cost comparison and maybe environmental benefit analysis of use of herbicides or permaculture or whatever the approaches are. I don't think you're talking about rebattling the concept of best available science with the Department of Ecology at this point. But I do think what I hear you saying is on a broader scale, we'd like to look at what the alternatives are to make decisions. And so we can have our options. And that's not trying to micromanage Alex to say, this is about the change order, but it's a broader philosophical approach so Alec can know how to approach bids and projects. And so that from a general perspective, that's appropriate. If you want to get more information on this, on herbicide application, I'd ask Alec, what's the effect of that delay on this in this project?
The plants do need to be in the ground as rootstock and when they're dormant. Right, and the grasses do need to get planted before the fall cold. There's a fall growing season for the herbaceous plants, so those are pretty critical. The woody plants that will improve the function of this wetland buffer compared to dandelions and buttercups. Those can be delayed. They need to be ordered. So I'd like to allow this to proceed, but I'm not. It's your guys' decision.
Well, I'm just gonna say is that, for example, the herbaceous plants, what are we planting for herbaceous plants? Oregon grape, or what are we planting?
There's a whole stormwater management plan with.
Yeah, I'm familiar with those plants.
Tables of plants, and those are the plants that are being recommended to be planted by
Redwood.
this contractor.
Yeah, red twig dogwood.
Yes, that's in
Oregon
there.
grape. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I'm planting those in my wetland. I'm planting those in my wetland, right? Unfortunately, I planted them in in May. So I had to carry buckets of water to the back of my field all summer. But anyway, I didn't plant them at the right time, but I didn't realize our summer was going to be so hot. But anyway, back to the point is that you can plant, you can plant those. The buttercup and dandelion are not going to interfere with those. And if we have no choice, for example, if the people that approve it are going to insist that we apply Roundup instead of mulch.
I don't think no one's insisting. I think it's an approach the contractor's recommending with this particular change. No one's telling us we are required to use herbicide. I think it's an approach that is economical, that this business decision that the contractor's making. And I can go back to them.
But if you plant, I'm just saying that if you plant bushes, buttercup and dandelion aren't going to mess with the bushes.
Maybe I should not have used the example of dandelion and buttercup, but they don't perform as well a function as a dogwood in a buffer. So,
yeah. Anyway, I don't know how much further to take this, but my point is that if there's a way to just delete, not replace the soil, but just delete the herbicide, or at least go back to the vendor and and the approving authorities to say, if we can do everything we're planning to do here, except not spray the Roundup, that would be great.
Well, I think the alternative would be shoveling dirt, putting it in trucks, hauling it away, and then shoveling dirt and hauling it and placing dirt. That's the other option. So.
Okay. Well, I guess I want to find another vendor then. That's me speaking.
I don't have
That's
that
me speaking.
choice. Patelco's got that as their sub.
Yeah.
I don't have a choice of a vendor for this.
Yeah.
They're already their sub.
Well, I mean, like I said, this is one project out of hundreds and thousands that have happened before, and this is not a place to to stake to draw the line or to fall on the sword at all. I don't want the PUD to do that at all. I'm just saying that if for me, I uncovered something for me personally that, as a commissioner, bothers me, and I don't have to fix it on this particular project, but it's something that obviously will impact how I advise we go forward in future projects. And like including having perhaps some kind of oversight into how our projects are executed on our behalf, with a consideration of protecting the ecosystem.
And I think that's what I was getting at, is this could be a directive, the implication of this discussion is that bid spec should ask for an alternatives for no use of herbicides and these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I would also be interested in, I know that when I was doing more work in King County, I think King County has made a commitment to reducing the amount of herbicide that they're using things like integrated pest management and taking other approaches to doing a lot of spraying. So it might be worth looking at what other communities are doing, because I think that there is kind of growing consensus that spraying, if we can avoid spraying Roundup, I think that our water quality would benefit from that, which I know is something we all care about.
John, to protect for conflict of interest, I won't be bringing my goats out there to prevent.
I was gonna say, I know somebody that has some goats, so but yeah, I don't know where we go from here, if this is something we should table, or if we should just kind of going forward think about this for future projects. Steve, I see that you're did you want to say something?
How do you advise our wise general manager? How do you advise we handle this situation?
My recommendation, commissioners, is to approve this one, and let's set a discussion up at a future meeting, and we can set that right now. We could say at our second meeting in October to discuss a policy on future wetland mitigation.
Okay.
This would be different. This would be different if we were, 6 months ago, before the final design was taking place, but we're not. And so we're in a situation right now where we really need to act. And
yeah,
so that would be my
I respect that. And so why don't we put that on the agenda, just so that going forward we have more options to choose from, and that we do understand what the economic impacts are and what the best available science says on things like this, so that we can slowly update our practices to be more in line with the values that we have. So, okay, that sounds good.
Thank you, Alec, for hearing all of that.
Thank you.
I didn't think we were going to be talking about buttercups so much in this meeting, but yeah, thank you, Alec.
I really don't like buttercups, so maybe I should be careful.
They take a lot of weeding in my garden. I can make a motion if we're ready to. So I'll make a motion to approve change order number 3 for Patelco, the Ferndale substation, substation project, and authorize the district's general manager to execute the change order.
Second,
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
if I may,
Commissioner Murphy?
sorry. Alec, because of the time of year it is and the weather like it is, there may not need to be much spraying. I think Roundup was just, or herbicide was just a term put in it as it would be year round. The summer would be a lot different. Right now, they may not need much, if any. I always chose before to plant a buffer in this time of year where there wasn't much spraying needed. And by the following year, wound up not using any spray herbicides at all. So hopefully that's what's going to be the case on this project.
I think a lot of the area is raw dirt at the moment anyway, just due to construction, so.
Yeah, and maybe you can just advise the contractor to be as sparing as humanly possible in their application. Because it came up at the commission.
And really, we're just trying to build an electric substation.
Right, I know, yeah. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? No, then please signify your support of the motion by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries. So that completes new business, and next we're on to the general manager's report.
Commissioners, I don't have anything at this time.
Okay, and I assume the river's in a good place now.
Yes,
Yeah, I
As of-
rode,
as of right now it is.
as I
but-
rode by it the other day, it looked awfully full.
Yeah.
And muddy, it looked like the Mississippi.
I haven't checked the turbidity, but I think you're right. And whenever we get these, especially when we get the heavy rains and they occur, we get that half inch of rain in a few hours, we get a lot of runoff, and that's what happens. But yep.
Okay, so let's move on to commissioner reports. If I may suggest, colleagues, what I'd like us to collectively discuss the WPUDA meetings, because I think we teamed up to cover them based on Commissioner Grant's request. So, it would be okay if we talk about the WPUDA meetings first, and then talk about anything else that didn't get covered in that. Would that be okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I took some notes. Is it okay if I go over those first?
Yeah, please.
Great. Okay, let me pull those notes up. So I attended the telecom work group and the energy work group. And that was on September 16th. And there is quite a bit of discussion of the Public Works Board funding, and that is being pursued by many PUDs, specifically for broadband related projects. Another update is that the State Broadband Office, of course, has a new lead. It was a current employee of the State Broadband Office who has experience in the public sector. Russ Elliott has left, and he's working for gone to work for a telecom. There was discussion at WPUDA about what are the qualifications of the new lead. The state is looking for a new lead, and the indication we got at WPUDA is that the new lead they're looking for someone with telecom experience. And a couple of commissioners expressed that they would like a new lead for the State Broadband Office to have some public sector experience as well. And that the lack of public sector experience may have presented challenges with the prior lead. Other thing is that the state broadband office is continuing an effort to go after an additional $100 million of federal funding. And in partnership with state funding. Several PUDs in the telecom group talked about micro trenching and how it's been a great solution for getting fiber laid deeper than 12 inches. And lastly, I brought up the subject that of Whatcom County exploring what it would be to create a regional ISP. And Pacific PUD expressed an interest in exploring that as well and potentially collaborating in that study. I don't know if our commission wants to do a multi-PUD collaboration on the subject, but I raised the issue, and Pacific PUD has similar interests. And I think one or two other PUDs might also have an interest in studying what it means to create a regional ISP. Certainly that would apply to Jefferson PUD because they just voted to become a ISP. So that's it on telecom. I'll pause and maybe take questions. Did either of you attend the telecom? Okay.
I couldn't attend, but the micro trenching is something that I want to mention to the port, just because I think that that's something that we should be thinking about to keep costs low. Most people, the micro trenching is for last mile typically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know was Mason PUD one of the ones that was, okay. Yeah.
A couple of PUDs talk about one of the Eastern Washington PUDs as well.
Okay.
I believe Chelan is doing some micro trenching too.
And has Jefferson made any more progress figuring out the details of their public ISP, or they just voted that they wanted to do it and they're figuring out the details now?
They're figuring out the details. And I'm just wondering if it would make sense for us to do, if the commission would support us, I don't know who, whether it be staff or commissioners, to do some kind of a study group with other PUDs to maybe collectively brainstorm about the questions we need to answer. For example, that would be something we probably could benefit from the questions we all have on the subject of forming a regional ISP.
Commissioners, I'll talk to Chris Walker and we'll make connection with Pacific specifically and Douglas and find out if there are others that are looking at that.
Great. Mike, any questions?
Yeah. No, thank you for the update. And another thing we talked about with the steering committee with support was maybe having Jefferson County join our meeting sometime and giving like a 15 or 20-minute update on what they've learned. So yeah, thanks for the updates.
So I'll move on to energy next.
Okay.
So the head of the energy committee, Jeff, wasn't able to attend the energy, but Nicholas, who's the Waputa staff person dedicated to the energy committee, asked the question: is the energy committee on track? Because the energy committee is wondering, because they've had relatively limited comment from commissioners, which wouldn't apply to me because I'm always providing comments, but anyway, but in general, he's wondering about that. And their general feedback was no news is good news, is that the commissioners feel like the energy committee is on track. It's just hasn't been any concerns with the exception of the point that I've made with Nicholas, and actually it was discussed for the first time at this energy committee meeting. In the spring, I raised the issue of reliability, the focus of having a greater focus on reliability rather than resource adequacy. The Energy Committee has been focused on this conversation of resource adequacy. And I proposed to Nicholas and Jeff that we add this as an agenda item on the Energy Committee meeting. It got discussed extensively. And I think that the commissioners from around the state will agreed that perhaps our focus should shift to grid reliability as a focus. And there was a consensus to increase the focus towards grid reliability for the committee. Nicholas also updated the group on CETA rulemaking. And there are some concerns now about where rulemaking is going with the Clean Energy Transformation Act. And the one particular issue that came up, which is potentially a serious issue, which may eventually lead to legal challenges, is that CETA is rulemaking may require hourly confirmation of the clean attribute of the energy that's being supplied. WPUDA staff believe and that the legislation that's passed required annual confirmation of the clean mix. However, environmental non-governmental organizations are concerned about adding this requirement to make it hourly. It's not exactly, I don't exactly understand what the rationale behind that is, but what that could do is make it difficult for PUDs to purchase power from BPA. So for that reason, WPUDA is quite concerned. And I don't know, Brian, if you have some further clarification or corrections on this point.
Well, that issue kind of gets to the core of, our concern with the Bonneville power supply mix is that, as I've stated before, we've got about 6% of our power supply that's unspecified resource. And what that is Bonneville just doing balancing just short-term transactions, to follow our load, follow the region's load, if you will. They're constantly doing within our transactions to assure that the generation matches load. And it's very difficult within an hour. You don't know where that generation is coming from. I mean, it's with this interconnected grid, and we're tied to California, and now Bonneville is going to join the California EIM. To actually specify to that degree is going to be extremely burdensome, difficult to do. We're down to making transactions within 15-minute periods. It used to be day ahead, now we're down to 15 minutes.
What is the block size for EIM, for the energy imbalance market?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
What is the block size or the time duration that the energy imbalance market works under?
Well, it's damn near darn near instantaneous. It's within 15 minutes or less. They're even talking about 5-minute increments.
That's what I thought. I thought it was 15 minutes. I didn't know, but I wanted to.
Yeah. It's so to actually have to track at that level whether or not that resource that came online to supply that need in that short period is green or not is going to be very difficult.
And in this regard, there's pretty uniform concern among the entire utility industry, private, obviously, as well. Even though the private sector tends to be able to embrace kind of short time horizon type things a little bit better on occasion. But anyway, there's a serious concern on this issue. It came up at the meeting. There's one last item from the Energy Committee meeting, and that is that the state is now requiring that all recipients of state funding particularly, I don't know if it's specifically for things relating to energy or if it would include broadband too. And Steve, maybe we can clarify on that. But I think the state is requiring that all agencies at the local level that receive state funding have a greenhouse gas policy. Now, as I know our PUD doesn't yet, but this could be something that we are now very much needing to develop and implement, and perhaps in short order. So I don't, it's the first time me hearing of it. It's possible I may have slightly misunderstood the requirement, but if Steve, you can report back to us on that particular issue, I want to make sure it's on our radar. And if it is an urgent item, we get it on our agenda.
So Commissioner, it was your understanding that it was all recipients? Okay.
Yeah, there's language in the CETA legislation regarding, and I think also in the clean fuels, but regarding a discussion within all utilities about the social cost of carbon. And I think that ties in here, that you actually, in doing your evaluation of your power supply choices, you take into account the social cost of carbon in making your cost effectiveness determination. So, and I do believe that applies to all utilities.
And I think I would say that I think as an organization that's dealing with climate change, climate adaptation, I think it's probably appropriate that we establish some policy anyway in the next year, even if nobody is demanding that of us. It's a bridge we've got to cross now.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be elaborate. It just needs, we need to have a policy.
All right.
That's all in my report from the, and I believe, yeah, thank you. On Wakuda.
Did I hear?
I just said thanks, Atul, for the overview.
I too also spent some time at the Wakuda meetings, underwater roundtable. I found it quite interesting. You know, there was a time when we talked about drought in the state, it was always seemed to be on Eastern Washington side. Now it seems to be coming from all the PUDs all over the state. I find that quite interesting. I'm very pleased that Whatcom County has been so active in this area of drought and concerns and everything we're doing right down to what Dave shared with us. So I'm really pleased with Whatcom County for being, I would say, at the top and being so active. So hats off to Whatcom County. Water rights seem to be a big issue everywhere. Again, trying to get water rights seems to be the big issue. People are now starting to jump on saying they want water rights because they see the requirements that are going to be coming. No water without water rights. And so it is a big concern trying to get water rights. Some of the PUDs are saying that they don't even know if they can get what they need because they're in line, and it just is a very, very slow process. Culverts seem to be another big costly item that the PUDs are faced with upgrading. Mason 1 is moving forward on building a new tank reservoir. I was interested in learning more about that, but there wasn't a lot of discussion. So I don't know if Steve, if you heard anything or about what Mason 1's doing, but I'd like to learn more about that. One of the surprises is from Bill Clark, who said that the plumbers union, I guess, has won or did win with dealing with labor. Labor used to be able to go and dig up water lines and make repairs to them. It is now saying that you will add another trade to digging up a water line or working on water lines of any sort, because it will now become considered plumber's work. So a laborer may uncover it at $45 to $50 an hour, but a plumber will come in at $90, $95 an hour to make the actual repair. This is something that we'll be facing. Let's see, I guess that would be it for the water. And the PUD board meeting. So one of the bigger ones was that it sounds like the state is going to require any buildings, any public or private, 10,000 square feet or more, must have solar panels. But they didn't go into saying, what does that mean? You know, a 40-watt bulb or 40% or 60% or what percentage of the building? So I don't have a lot more details. I thought that was quite interesting that building is going to be doing that. Dark fiber will be looked at. They mentioned ports and PUDs about taxing dark fiber in the future. The state feels that there's an area there that they could start taxing. So even though the fiber isn't being used, if the port or PUD has put the fiber in and is considered dark fiber, in the future, we could be seen taxed for that. And due to time, I think that's about it. There was discussions on other things too. Oh yeah, vaccinations. It was also the state is requiring that everyone that comes near public buildings must be vaccinated or show proof of it. That means contractors and everything. Well, PUD said that they're going to be looking into this because there's a lot of areas where the PUD does not own property, but oversees it, like water right areas and stuff. And does that mean that they're going to have a contractor approve vaccination, being vaccinated? So Steve, I don't know if you're hearing anything about this for us.
I have not heard anything on that on the last item in terms of anybody that comes in contact or comes into a public building. I have not. I'll check that out, but.
Yeah, talk to George. He was the one that brought it up. So,
okay.
Due to time, I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
I just have a few things to add. Oh, Atul, did you want to say something?
No.
Okay. I was able to join just a little bit of Water Week and heard from Sam Ship with Skagit PUD. And they were talking about a micro hydro project that they did. And just wanted to highlight that they were able to use a lot of grant funding to help pay for their project through the Washington Clean Energy Fund. So there's a revolving loan fund. And then USDA's Rural Energy for America program, which I've worked on with some electric co-ops. So they got 25% of their project costs from USDA. And they used InPipe, which is a contractor that does micro hydro projects, and InPipe has a history working with the Rural Energy for America program, the REAP program. So they were able to make the application process easy. So just wanted to highlight those two things so that we're thinking about grant funding. As you know, I don't know where we're at with looking at that micro hydro project that we've discussed, but it sounds like that those grant funds helped make the project pencil for them. So yeah, his name's Sam Ship from Skagit PUD. So just wanted to share that.
That project was pretty simple for Skagit because it utilized the Judy Reservoir, and then coming out of the Judy Reservoir just down into the river, into the system. So, but the use of the grant funds, I know, was critical for them to make that work. Yeah.
That's all for me.
Yeah, I think where we're at on our project is that We have got a rough estimate of what it will entail, what the amount of electricity produced will be to install micro hydro on our outflow pipes, but we don't have a customer for the electricity that will be generated. Or there's no solution of how to get that. I guess I shouldn't say customer. There's no solution for how to get the electricity that's produced into the distribution system. And Brian, if Brian's still around, he can clarify that further.
Well, and we don't have to get into it right now, but I just wanted to bring it up because it continues to be something that I would like us to talk about, and maybe eventually we can have a full discussion about it.
Right. And maybe grant funds could help solve the distribution problem, Brian.
Right. If the interconnection costs could be offset by grant funds, you know, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe we can put it on an agenda for a future meeting. Okay.
Yes.
So let's move on to public comment. I don't see any hands up.
No hands up.
Okay, so we'll close the public comment period, and the last item we have on our agenda is executive session. And we are planning to start at 11, so maybe we can take a short break. John, how long?
There'll be two matters. I think will be probably 20 minutes. Let's say, actually, probably could be shorter depending on questions. The two topics will be potential litigation and then review of a candidates for public employment. And I would say 15 minutes tops. No action is anticipated, and I have a link for you to go to that already should be out there.
All right, thank you. So commissioners will
be back at 11.
Want to take an 8-minute break? Come back at 11.
Come back at 11. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you all.
Okay.
Hi, Ann, we're coming back.
And Atul doesn't have a panelist link, so if you could upgrade him to a panelist, that would be great.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Great. We just completed executive session. There was no action. Is there anything else today for the good of the order? Thank you all for joining us for the Tuesday, September 28th, the Whatcom PUD meeting. Meeting is closed.